This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association. Your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Mark Magnuson.
Hello and welcome into Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Mark Magnuson. Today is Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024, and we're so glad you can join us for today's show. In today's episode, we will have the latest edition of Between the Pods, but first, let's run down the closing markets.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net.
At the end of another trading day, we are now joined by Ross Baldwin to discuss today's trade. Ross, what did we see take place in the grains?
Hey, Mark, we had a little firmer trade here today across the grain markets. Corn ended the day up a penny heading into the close. The soybean market, that was the one that really had good gains. And after yesterday's strong performance, soybeans don't look too bad here technically. Most of their strength is coming from the South American weather forecast. It's shaping up to be a little bit drier here, mainly with Argentina. With the next, you start to look at the extended forecast where Argentina could set in to have a 7 to 10 day period of drier weather. So that's kind of been the biggest driver for the soybean markets.
And Ross, just for a reminder, could you please tell us where we are right now in terms of our price comparatively with the rest of the world on corn and soybeans, and whether or not this is a good time to buy from us when you're looking at it from the perspective of other countries?
We are right now, U.S. corn we're slightly below, price below Argentina supplies here, which it's through the end of February right now is where those prices are. So as their harvest and production starts to come online, we will lose the competitiveness that we have going on there.
And then Ross, with the soybean side of things and trying to figure out what that final production number is going to be out of Brazil, you've seen those guesses all over the place. That's going to continue to be the case, I think. Although I think some people think that the USDA number might not be the final number. Where do you fall on that and kind of what you've been reading and following with that soybean number in Brazil?
Yeah, the analysts, they're all over the place, obviously, on that number, which with how big South America is, that's what leads to just the wide guesses there. But one major crop consultant that we follow down there, I mean, he has trimmed his production again, and he's in the low 150s for the Brazil soybean production. So I think that's probably a fair number for right now. Keep in mind, the increased acres that Brazil has year over year, and Argentina's production being as high as it is relative to last year's production, it is kind of keeping a lid on this thing to where, these prices, we've seen the sell-off in the soybean market. So it's the soybeans are sitting 12.39 here going home today. So even with the production cuts that we've seen, the prices aren't as high as what you'd normally expect, just given the year-over-year production increases.
Also saw some price movement to the upside today for the wheat complex. What was the story there for wheat today?
Yeah, wheat had a good move here today. Wheat's had, just a nice technical recovery over the last week. It is kind of bumping up against some resistance up by the 20-day moving averages. But Kansas City wheat it was up to 10 to 12 cents. So it'd be nice here to see some nice technical follow through. But again, even the Kansas City wheat market, it needs to see a push up above the 20-day moving average just to kind of keep this momentum rolling. The funds they're obviously short the entire grain complex. The only link they had in the grain complex last week was they were a small long in soybean meal, but they've been a big corn short. They really added to their bean short. They've been short the wheat complex. So if you could see these markets, especially the wheat market, get above the 20-day moving average, you could continue to see the funds liquidate or lighten up on that short position that they got.
Let's switch over to the other side of the ag marketplace and the protein sector. What did we see happen with the livestock today?
We had strong gains across the livestock market. Live cattle closed up the day. The front months were up 90 cents to $1. The back months were 60, 70 higher. Feeder cattle had a strong day. They were 240 higher. And the hog market, Feb hogs were up 240. April hogs were 270 higher. Really, the cattle market, we had that cattle on feed report here last week. The on feed came in at 102, which was in line with the guesses. The placements number was 95.5, which that also was in line with the guesses. The report in itself was in line with the pre-report guesses, but overall in the big picture, it's a friendly report, especially when you start to think about supplies, how we tighten up as we head through 24, and we should see confirmation of that here on next Wednesday's semi-annual inventory report. That report, depending on where the decimal points come in at, potentially shows the smallest U.S. beef cow herd since 1962 and even smaller than 2014. And talking about the managed money and the grains, the funds are holding a very small, long position in live cattle. They're long 13, 14,000 contracts as of last Tuesday's cutoff. And they've been short feeder cattle, and they were still short. I think it was 1,400 contracts of feeder cattle as we're entering a period of tighter supplies. And so I think the funds, they've been covering this feeder short. They're adding a little bit to their live cattle long. And I think we continue to see that, especially as we start working out into tighter numbers. The fundamental story in the cattle markets, it's far from over, in my opinion.
And with the hog market right now, it does seem a little bit predictable, at least on what's going to happen with the ag marketplace, because we see it get just a little bit above that $70 mark in the front month, and it will come back down. And then we see it get a little bit too close to about that $65 range, and it seems to bump right back up.
Correct. It's been in this tight trading range, but today we did have a pretty good technical breakout for the hog market. February lean hogs, the 100-day moving average is right around 73.30, which is right where they settled at today. So hogs, they do look pretty good technically. So I do feel a little optimistic with hogs. April lean hogs, they were 270 higher. They did close above their 100-day moving average today, which was at 79.50. So hogs, they look pretty encouraging as we head home for the day.
Ross Baldwin of agmarket.net, our guest here today. Ross, what is the best way for our viewers to get in touch for more marketing information?
You can reach me at our office. It's 712-373-3276, or you can find any of the ag market brokers at agmarket.net.
Ross, thanks so much for taking the time to join us on the program here today. We'll speak again soon, hopefully. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Thank you to Ross Baldwin of agmarket.net for our closing market summary. Let's turn our attention now to the closing numbers, and you can find those numbers anytime on our website at iowaagnet.com. Just click on the Markets tab.
March corn up 3/4 cent at 446.5. March soybeans up 15 1/4 at 1239.5. March soybean meal up $5.30 at 361.10. March soybean oil up 5 cents at 48.21. Chicago wheat unchanged at 596.5. Minneapolis wheat down 1.5 at 699 even. Kansas City hard red wheat up 10.5 at 617.5. And March oats down 8 1/4 at 370 1/4. On the Merc, February live cattle up 87 cents at 174.65. March feeder cattle up 237 at 233.65. February lean hogs up 237 at 73.30. February pork cutout up $1.80 at 87.40. And Class 3 milk down 22 cents at 15.67.
And that does it for our closing market coverage here today on Ag Matters PM. It is time now to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soybean Checkoff. And when we come back, I will be joined by Matt Herman for the latest edition of Between the Pods. That's next here on AM PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
You're watching Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and in today's episode, it is time for the latest edition of Between the Pods. I'm joined by Matt Herman with the Iowa Soybean Association as we preview the Farm Forward event that is coming up at the end of the month.
It's time to go between the pods with the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network and the Iowa Soybean Association. For the next year, we will explore the ways Iowa-grown soybeans are making a difference at home and around the world. Now, here's your host of Between the Pods, Mark Magnuson.
Mark Magnuson for the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and I'm joined today by Matt Herman at the Iowa Soybean Association for Between the Pods. And Matt, we're here today to talk about Farm Forward, which is an event coming up at the end of January this month. I know you're really looking forward to it. You've had a big part in putting it together. Could you tell us, Matt, what is the overall goal of Farm Forward?
Yeah, we're really excited to be hosting this Farm Forward event on January 30th in Des Moines at the Marriott downtown. So this event, it's really trying to take those checkoff dollars from farmers and redeploy them to help these farmers understand everything that we're doing in this space and give them maybe a competitive advantage going into this planting season. So this event's going to cover a whole wide variety of topics that are, from our perspective, very important for soybean farmers. So we're going to start off with a keynote speaker, Frank Kelly, who's going to talk about changing politics in our export markets. So we're very familiar with this as far as the Chinese market go. But as we see, there's other markets that are huge opportunities for us growing abroad, like India, the Philippines, or North Africa. But these come with inherent political risk that we also have to manage and understand. We're also going to have a panel talking about the Iowa story, really about biofuels. How did we get here? Where are we going? I'm going to speak at that. We're also going to have Doug Strike speak at that, and then we're going to have Verbio, who's running this DuPont, the old DuPont cellulosic ethanol plant, and really doing some amazing work there, making renewable natural gas. And so they're going to give us a little window into the future, if you will. Then we're going to have a panel after lunch talking about soybean breeding, the future of this. We think that seed companies are still going to continue to make those traits, those targets for yield, for drought, for pestilence, all those normal things. But we also see the opportunity in the climate and energy space where they're looking at specific traits to unlock a new market or to increase access to a market. So for example, a high oil soybean to target that renewable diesel market. And finally, we'll wrap it up with a discussion of on-farm economics that'll be led by one of our ISA board members, but it'll be several other economists, one from Iowa State and a couple from private industry. They'll come and help really paint a picture of what markets, what margins are going to look like for 2024 and 2025, and what drivers farmers should be on the lookout for.
So Matt, in the name, it really is Farm Forward because it's not just the here and now. You're also thinking about years down the road, and that's kind of where the checkoff dollars, I would imagine, tie in because we're thinking about the future with investing those checkoff dollars.
Absolutely. So like we said, we really wanted to give farmers kind of a whole look around the cube of everything that was coming at them this year and then try to get them set up going forward. And we do see this event not just being a one-off deal. We hope to continue to do this in the future and use our outreach events through the summer, like our Summer Soy Series or our district meetings, to get feedback from those farmers and then bring that back into our Farm Forward event each winter. So that's really where the checkoff is going to deploy. Although there'll be a number of these activities or a number of these discussions that will touch on how at least policy impacts them. So you can imagine, for example, in the biofuel session, right? That's a very heavily policy-driven market. And that dovetails into our evening event, which is a partial checkoff event, which is our legislative reception that we have each year. And that will be held at Curate downtown Des Moines. And so that'll give the opportunities for our members, our growers, to interact in a non-checkoff event, to interact with their legislators or other stakeholders that might show up and want to discuss our soybean issues and priorities.
So Matt, let's start with those four topics that you discussed to begin with. Let's start with Frank Kelly, the keynote speaker. So what I'm understanding is kind of touching on some of those markets that maybe not everyone realizes are expanding for American soybeans to be brought in and to help that situation there.
Yeah, so Frank Kelly has a background in finance and trade and exports, and so he's really got a business mindset, and he's been doing work and business development work in these countries all across the globe for many, many years and has a whole bunch of experience. And so, like we mentioned, probably recent and fresh in our soybean farmers' mind is the loss of that Chinese export market the last few years and what that did to prices. And so, of course, a key goal of the checkoff and of our partners like the U.S. Soybean Export Council are to continue to diversify those markets to avoid a shock to the system like that we had. But we also have to be really wide-eyed of, who are we looking to go do business with, not just who the current power is in that country, but what do the politics look like for 5, 10, 15 years? What's the trajectory of that? So Frank's going to give us a really nice overview of some of those key markets that we've helped him understand for the soybean industry. Then he's going to bring his own internal expertise and help us share with us what he sees coming too.
And then in the biofuel space, I know that's an area you're very well versed in, but where do you think right now we are when you look at biofuels and kind of that is all about the future?
Yeah, so I think many of our farmers, they're familiar with what happened with the corn ethanol boom. We've had a biodiesel boom, and now we're kind of in the midst of this renewable diesel boom. They probably hear a lot of conversation about. And so I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of that. Doug Strike will talk about, what in-state policy have we had from the Renewable Fuels Infrastructure Program to what may be coming in the future and this session or maybe in another session. But what we really see is with the combination of policy like at the federal level through the places like the Inflation Reduction Act, but also in the state of California, we're moving to kind of this next generation. Our farmers are hearing a lot about conversations like things like renewable diesel I mentioned or sustainable aviation fuel. Many people know that there's this company called Verbio doing something in Nevada, but most people aren't aware that they're buying 100,000 tons of corn stover a year and converting it to renewable natural gas and fertilizer. And so these are the opportunities that we want to make sure that farmers are really aware of so that if they have interest to try to participate in this market or work on anything in that supply chain, we want to give them the tools and information to chase it.
And then one of the topics that you mentioned as well, the specialty breeding of soybeans. I know that's a wide open space because it can be fine-tuned to a specific area, whether it's specialty breeding for food all the way to the other end, specialty breeding for energy needs.
Right, and our viewers don't have the benefit of the conversation that we had right before this, but we were just talking about kind of the wide variety that's out there. And like I mentioned in the opening remarks, farmers are very aware of kind of these productivity or a herbicide traits that have been put in these products for a number of years. But many may not be aware that we're starting to craft beans, for example, to have a specific oil profile that might fit a need or displace a product. And a couple I would just mention is, one of our panelists will be from Zeocal, and their specific product is a high oil soybean. There's another company out there that's called Callista, and they're trying to change the oil profile. So instead of it looking like soybean oil, it looks more chemically like palm oil. And that has a bunch of different benefits for your food formulators and your manufacturers. So we see these. There's also been, Benson Hill's out there doing their thing on the protein side. There's a group out of the University of Illinois that's trying to make plants have greater rates of photosynthetic efficiency, right? So they can just absorb more carbon. These are all things that could have productivity benefits, they could have environmental benefits, and we want to make sure that farmers see and understand what's coming, and then also give them an insight into how these could be monetized on the farm, right? How could they benefit from this as well?
And is that kind of the fourth panel then, kind of bringing everything together on how you can maybe see, is it just a little bit of a boost of ROI on your own operation?
Right. I think that's the fourth panel, right? So we're going to talk about some of these future things and kind of bring it home of how they could impact profitability on the farm. But then we're also going to have, Chad Hart there from Iowa State. Alan Weber will come up from Mark IV. We're going to have EverAg there, who many people might know from their own business. And they're really going to be discussing, what does farm income look like for 2024? What levers may farmers still be able to pull kind of, maybe say this late in the game? I know a seed hasn't even gone in the ground yet, but many of those pre-planting decisions have already been made. And so they're going to, help farmers understand what can they still do? What should they be thinking about for fall marketing? We'll really try to bring it home and make sure that farmers can have a profitable and productive 2024.
So Farm Forward coming up on January 30th, and that is going to be held here in Des Moines. Where's the exact location, Matt?
It's at the Des Moines Marriott downtown. It's on Grand. I can't give you the exact address, though.
And I know that this is a conference that, again, you tied it into a lot of the activities and events that take place throughout the year for Iowa Soybean Association. And it's also just a nice chance to get a lot of farmers in one spot and to come together and talk about all these things under one roof. Yeah,
we're super excited. We have over 150 registrations right now, and that number is still growing. Registration is still open, so if you haven't secured a spot, please reach out, jump online, register if you have any questions. The team's available to take those. And we'd love to see you in Des Des Moines for the Farm Forward event, for the legislative reception if you're able to attend, and I believe even the Power Farm shows the day afterwards. And so if you wanted to stick around and attend that, that'll just be about a block away.
He is Matt Herman with the Iowa Soybean Association for Between the Pods. Matt, thanks so much for the time and best of luck with Farm Forward.
Thank you.
Thank you to Matt Herman of the Iowa Soybean Association for joining us today on Between the Pods. And that wraps up today's episode of Ag Matters PM. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. Also, don't forget to visit our website anytime, sign up for our newsletter that delivers those 5 stories to your inbox each day. Also, you can follow us on YouTube for the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Make sure you subscribe, click on the notification icon as well, so that will let you know whenever we have any new videos available. Also, you can follow us on social media on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and TikTok. And don't forget our free twice daily market podcast, which are found on Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Mark Magnuson. For Riley Smith, Dustin Huffman, and Andy Peterson, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.